And we're live.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. We have a fairly small crew tonight, Molly, Linda, and myself. And we have David Stearn that's going to talk to us about some narrowband processing with scripts. And we had some discussions before we went live and got some very interesting things to say. Before we turn it over to David, though, I took a look at our calendar, and I'm afraid it's kind of
That's why. Okay. I think we might be okay now. That was my fault. Yeah, I forgot to hit the transition button. Okay, I think we're good now.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, I see you.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Are we good?
Yeah.
All right, we're back. This is our third strike. After this, we're out. No, not. We're not really out. Thank you for all being patient out there. And once again, we have David Stearn here tonight, and he's going to talk about PixInsight scripts to process narrowband images. We had a lot of pre-talk about this, and there's some really interesting things going on, which David's going to talk about. Before that, once again, I'll make a pitch. We need more presenters. I looked at our calendar, and it's getting pretty sad. Next week, we don't have one. The week after that, we have John Hayes, which is going to be a fascinating presentation. Of course, John's always is. But after that, we have a lot of open dates, and we encourage everyone out there that has an idea, has an interesting processing technique, or anything else related to astrophotography to come forward, go to our site, the astroimagingchannel.org, go to the contact page, send us a note, someone will get back to you when you'll be on the schedule. I don't have anything more to say. Oh yeah, I should mention again, Molly was at NEAF and is seriously recruiting people, but still we need more people on our schedule. So please tick the button and tell us what you'd like to talk about. So we've been a bit delayed. So David, I'll turn it over to you and talk to us about scripts and PixInsight.
Sure. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. And I should start sharing, and I'm going to go to my PowerPoint. Everybody see the PowerPoint app?
Yeah, go to presentation mode and you're all good.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, you see it? Great.
We do.
Okay, so I'll be talking to you about some techniques I've been using for the past several years for processing narrowband data. I use a one-shot color system. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And this image on the left is one of the data sets we'll be using. This is the Heart and Soul Nebula. I shot this from my backyard in Vail, Arizona. It's a Bortle 4, and that's about 60 hours worth of data that I collected, including the RGB. And we'll show that live later. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Illinois, grew up there, had a career in IT software sales for about close to 45 years. So I may be dating myself. And I started out selling mini computers for a company called Burroughs Corporation when we used to use 7-inch floppy disks to load the operating system. So it's way back. But it segued into more of a software career type profession. And as a creative outlet, I was very interested in photography. I've been an amateur photographer for over 25 years. After I retired and my wife retired, we decided that we wanted to move to a warmer climate. So we decided to move to Tucson, Arizona in 2021. And somehow I got into this whole deep space astrophotography hobby. I really had no intention to get involved with it, but we really enjoyed the night skies where we live. We could actually see the stars where we couldn't see them in Illinois. I started doing some research, and then I discovered my happy place called Starzona here in Tucson. Paid a couple of visits there, and we ended up buying a Celestron C8 with a hyperstar and all the optional accessories for it. And then it rained for 3 weeks straight, which usually happens when you buy a new rig. And I couldn't even polar align yet. So we went to one of their star parties a few weeks later, learned how to do it. And of course, we're shooting M42 like everyone starts out to shoot when they start the hobby. And we saw live stacking in front of our eyes on my iPad. And then I got the Astro bug. So I've been doing this ever since. I probably spend 90% of my time doing this hobby. I have no other life. This is it, but I really enjoy it. This is the scope that I'm currently set up now. It's my brand new SQA 106. So I'll have the 55 for wide field. I wanted to go to a refractor setup because my plan is to go to mono before the end of the summer. So this is the current equipment I have right now. A couple of things to note for the presentation. All of the SHO data I've taken has been with the Optolong L-Para 2 filter and the ASCAR D2 filter. And then my stars have been taken with the RGB Ultra. So even though we're in a Bortle 4, we do have some pockets of light pollution. So the filters come in very, very handy. Before I get into the live demo, the images that I'll be showing you today, I've done some pre-processing. And this is the pre-processing workflow I use for all of my data sets, whether it's mono data sets that I've acquired or whether it's my own one-shot color data. And I'm sure many of you who are experienced in PixInsight are aware of this as well. But just to review, you do a star alignment of all your master lights, do your dynamic crop to make sure that you have the crop you want for all the master lights, they all match. For my SHO or for my narrowband images, I do a channel combination. And if I'm taking RGB data for the stars, of course, I go through a normal process, including channel combination, if it's mono. If it isn't, I'll just use my existing data I collected with my one-shot color, and I go through my normal process for that. Gradient removal is an option if it needs to be done, depending on how clean your data is. And then from there, I'll use Blur Exterminator for some deconvolution. For the mono data, I'll separate the stars using Star Exterminator, create a separate image for the stars. If I only have SHO data for the stars, I'll use that. If I have RGB data, I'll combine it in as well. And then I do an unlinked stretch. And then from there, I'm ready to process using the scripts I'm going to show you. So now let's go to the live demo. And because I have such a weak computer, I'm going to get out of PowerPoint. And then before we go into PixInsight, the scripts I'm going to show you are on the Cosmic Photos website, cosmicphotos.com. A couple of months ago, Mike Cranfield presented PixelMathUI, and he demonstrated how you can take existing PixelMath code or write your own code and build a front-end user interface for the PixelMath scripts and provide sliders and check marks and radial buttons and so forth with it to make it easier to use. Well, I'll be showing you the actual repository and showing you the scripts that I use on a regular basis. Frankly, I'm not a PixelMath coder. In fact, I stay away from anything with the word math in it, but I like using the tools, and I've been using Bill Blanshan's tools for the past 3 years. So to load what I'm going to show you, you go to the PixelMathUI, go to the scripts page, scroll down to PixelMathUI, then you highlight the URL for it. I'm going to copy that. And then I'll get out of Safari because I'm not going to need it anymore. I'll go into PixInsight. And for those who haven't done this before, when you add a script, any sort of script, you go to Manage Repositories, you go to Add, and then you'll type in the URL. I'm not going to click OK because I've already done this, but assuming I did that, then you'd say OK. You'd go to Resources again, go to Updates, go to Check for Updates, which I'm not going to do because it's already installed. And then you go to PixInsight and you quit PixInsight, come back. And what you will see on the script portion is a line for cosmic photos. These are all the different cosmic photo scripts. This is an older version of GHS. I wouldn't use that. But when I go to PixelMath, you will see the first screen you'll see is just the PixelMathUI screen. If I go to the little up arrow here, that's to load the scriptlets. Now you'll see the different scripts I'm going to show you today. For example, you have SHO colorization. I'll show you that later on. That's how I do narrowband normalization. If I have stars, I can screen them and so forth. There's a lot of different scripts. There's 25 scripts here from Bill. There are also around 7 or so scripts from Mike Cranfield you can use. So we'll show that later on in the presentation. But when I started out in astrophotography, I noticed on Astrophotography some really colorful pictures that were done in a Hubble palette. And I researched it. I looked on YouTube. I did a lot of research there. I found various videos on how to process that data, but a lot of them were complicated. It required writing PixelMath code, doing a lot of curve stretches, doing a lot of work with Photoshop, until I came across Bill Blanshan's YouTube site, which is called Another Astro Channel. And he had these scripts set up in PixelMath that he just started to use for that purpose. And I've been using the scripts ever since. In fact, I've been a beta tester for some of his new scripts, especially with my one-shot color data, because he doesn't have a one-shot color setup, just to test them out. Now, some of you, when you hear the word narrowband normalization, you may also be thinking about a process called narrowband normalization. I'll just go down here on the screen. And this is the process some of you may be familiar with already if you're using it. This was something that Mike Cranfield and Bill Blanshan teamed up with a couple of years ago. And Mike developed his first iteration of that user interface. So you could go ahead and say you did channel combination in the SHO palette. And let's say you had HA data as opposed to a linear fit that you might be familiar with in PixInsight. This would take care of that. And then from there, you could go ahead and get rid of the green. You could boost the signals and so forth. I'm not going to show that to you today. I've been using that for a while. Prior to that, I was using the individual scripts. But now, with what Bill has developed, it's really taken it to another level. And I can literally, if I'm not explaining everything to you, I can grab a cup of coffee in the morning, and I can get 90% of my processing done within 15 minutes just by using these scripts. And I'm going to give you some examples of that. So the data I'm going to work with first is mono data. As you can see, it is unstretched data. It is linear data. I'm going to stretch it out. And this is Milot 15. I hope I got the pronunciation right for that. This is the part of the Heart Nebula, close to the heart of the Heart Nebula. And this was data that I acquired for free from astrophotomarket.com. So after viewing this, if you want to try these scripts out, you can go ahead. All you do is sign up. You don't have to pay anything for it. It's a free data set. It's a premium data set. And it's basically 3 master lights with sulfur, hydrogen, and oxygen you can work with. So I've already done my pre-processing here. I've gone up to the stage of channel combination. I've run blur exterminator. And what I did do is I went ahead and I resampled it, just because my Mac is very weak on the memory and I don't want to delay us during the presentation. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use Star Exterminator, and I'm going to go ahead and generate a star image that I'll use later on. Okay, so here we go, and we have a lovely set of magenta-looking stars, which I will show you later on how we're going to convert those. It's a fairly easy process. So at this point, we see the SHO image. It looks pretty decent at this point. Just remember, we're not going to do a link stretch. If we do a link stretch with this image, it's going to be all green. So you don't want to do a link stretch. The best way to process these images using these scripts, and what Bill Blanshan recommends, is to use an unlinked stretch and use non-linear data. And there's some reasons, and I'll go into those quickly as we go through the presentation. So there, I've done that. The next step will be to bring up my first scriptlet, and you can use shortcuts with these as well. I'll go into PixelMathUI. I'll bring up the library, bring up Bill's scripts, and now I'm going to do what's called a simple stretch. So now you'll see the screen that comes up. This is the front end user face, and in order to use these scriptlets, you have to have PixelMathUI to do it. This is what provides the user interface for it. The first area is the description. This talks about the actual script itself, gives a little description, talks about how to use it. In this case, this is an automated initial stretch designed to ensure that no data is clipped and allowing saturation to be preserved. So you're going to notice when I actually do the stretch, the image is going to look a little flat, but I'm going to show you my method to bring out the details in the image. From here, we're going to look up which view we want, the target view. It's going to load it into the preview box. If I want to turn the preview off, I'll do that, or I'll just leave it on. And it always relates to the last state of the image. In this case, we're just stretching it. Again, we want it unlinked. We're going to use we're not going to click linked. We can change the background, but I generally leave it at default. And if you want, you can bump up the saturation at this stage. But as a best practice, I don't do that because it's a global saturation, and I don't not necessarily want everything saturated, especially in this case, we don't have a lot of space behind it from the background. It's more of a zoom into the actual nebula itself. But if we had a lot of areas outside the nebula itself that were just space and stars, we wouldn't want those saturated as well. And then if it's an area like, for example, a galaxy, you can use this on broadband images as well. There's a bright core. You can use the highlight protection if you want. Now, to apply this, all I'm going to do is use the check mark. And it's going to apply it directly over the image. It does give you the option, if you don't want to do that and you want to save the original image, you can go ahead and override this, and then you can create a new image and then label it however you want to label it. But in this case, we don't need to do that. So now, as you can tell, because it's white, that means it's already stretched. I'll get rid of this. And again, it looks kind of flat at this point. So my next step is to go through normalization. The previous process was called narrowband normalization. Now it's called SHO colorization because it does a lot more than normalization. I'm going to bring this up and go to SHO colorization. Select the view like I did before. Now you'll see the image. I'm going to bring it back to its default state. I was using it earlier. There are several different colorization modes you can use. One is colorization all, where I have full control. I can choose whether I'm going to do background normalization or narrowband normalization. I used to have to do a different step prior to this scriptlet. Before I even did a stretch, I would have to go ahead and run background neutralization because you want a neutral background before you do the normalization. And all that narrowband normalization is doing is it's equalizing the three different channels. So let's say in a typical SHO image, your HA is normally going to be your dominant channel. It's going to do that for you automatically through the pixel math. The other way of doing it, the more traditional route, is writing pixel math code and doing percentages, and that takes a lot of extra time and extra effort. This alleviates that. You can choose whether you're going to use linear data or nonlinear data. I prefer to use nonlinear data. I know the Bill does as well. You just have to do extra work if you're using linear data. Plus, when we get to the luminance part, you won't be able to use it with linear data as well. If you're dealing with an object like an emission nebula that has a lot of space around it, if you notice any noise, you can remove the noise as well. You just don't want to go too far with it, otherwise it'll cut into the nebula. And then I can actually go in here and I can adjust the S, for example. So you'll notice when I do that, it adds more signal. 90% of the time I'm not doing that. I'm leaving everything at the default because since we're using a Hubble palette in this case, we don't want one dominant over the other. It kind of defeats the purpose of normalizing the data. The color adjustment section will not be applicable in this case. And even if I change things like adjusting the hue of the S2, it's not going to change anything for me because if I'm in SHO, it's not going to be in that mode. Well, let's go to normalized SHO in this case. Now you see it has normalized the data for me automatically. I can also do the luminance, and for some of you that are familiar with processing this in the more traditional way, you would do what's called a linear fit or an autolinear fit. Well, the luminance takes care of that, so I don't have to worry about that. At this point, if I want to, I can remove the green or remove the magenta. It's basically a modified SNR that Bill developed. The problem with the traditional SNR is you can really lose a lot of detail in your image. Whereas this hybrid approach will remove the green from the background, but leave the details as well. I typically will wait until I've modified the image a little bit more, brought out more of the details, maybe done a little bit of saturation enhancement before I do that. And I'll do that as a later step. So at this point, I will go ahead and check it off or apply it. Even though I have resampled the image, you can tell my computer is a little bit slow, and that'll be rectified later this year. Okay, so now we go there, we see we have the finished image at this point in this process. Now, let's say you're saying, well, look, what if I'm going to use the same settings all the time? I don't want to have to go through this each time. So I can create a shortcut. This is something that Mike Cranfield talked about as well in his presentation in February. If I hit the Shift key and hit the little arrow key, now I have created a shortcut of the process. Now, it's not only going to bring the process up, in fact, it's not even going to bring the process, it's just going to do the work. Let's go back and let's reverse what I just did. Let's take this icon here, and I'm going to move it here. All it's going to do is run that process to do all the normalization, do the luminance, do everything I asked it to do, the background, all that's being done behind the scenes. So what this allows you to do now is to actually set up a workflow using shortcuts that you set up, and you don't have to worry about picking the scriptlet, making the changes to it, and so forth. It's all done for you. The only thing I will caution you about is any of these shortcuts, whether it's a shortcut to get into an actual scriptlet or whether it's a shortcut to run a scriptlet without getting into the actual panel itself. If there are any changes to the actual scriptlets themselves, you'll have to redo your shortcuts. Just be aware of that. So at this point, I've gone through this process. My next step now is, this image looks a little flat. So what I'll typically do, and this is a little bugaboo with the Macs, you have to bring it back. I'm going to go into GHS, and what I'm going to use for, this is actually a trick that I learned from Adam Block. When I go into GHS, there's a mode called, or transformation type called linear. This allows me to, in a linear mode, even though it's stretched, to go ahead and adjust my black point and my white point. Anytime you see a big gap like this in your histogram, that means there's data there that you're missing. And you won't be able to reveal that data until you bring your black point more to the left. So I'm going to go here and use this little caret. I could have also used this level here. There's another area here called low clip and high clip. So if I'm adjusting the black point, if it starts clipping, it's going to notify me right here. And that's something I want to try to avoid. So I'm going to bring this down. Notice how it's getting a little darker. And it's already started to clip. So I'm going to bring it back a little bit. And I'm just going to apply it. So now we'll apply that. Now we have more room to work with to bring out the details. So let's say I pick a dark point here. It's going to bring me here. I set up what's called the symmetry point. I'm going to slowly bring this up. And now you see all the details. The only thing you got to be aware is you don't want to bring this up too high. I'm going to go ahead and bring this down a little bit. So this is before, this is after. I'm satisfied with that. I'm going to apply it. And now I'm ready to go to another scriptlet. Now, as opposed to going to the menu, I'm going to go ahead and apply one directly using a shortcut. But before I do that, because I am in the process here and I've actually created something, I want to make sure that it's saved. So I'm going to go to Malloy. I'm going to go ahead and say L project. I get my spelling right here. PROG, so I know what it is. And I'm just going to go ahead and save it just to make sure in case something happens that we haven't wasted a lot of time. Great, so we're set with that. So at this point, I'm going to look at the colors, and I think I can add a little bit of saturation. There is a scriptlet that Bill developed called saturation via HSV masking. And what I'm trying to do is provide a little saturation, but I don't want to go crazy with it. That to me is a little bit too garish. What I want to do is make it look just a little bit more color. Just a little bit. Without being, it's bad enough we're doing a false color. Let's not make it really false, right? So here we go. I think that's good enough. I can adjust the brightness if I want to as well. And you're probably wondering what happens if I have an object that's surrounded by space and I only want the object to be colorized or saturated. There's a mask. It's automatically done for us. And we can adjust the mask as well. If I want to enlarge the mask, I can do it. If I want to bring it down, I can do it. I can adjust the strength. I can adjust the blur. All that stuff you would normally have to do manually is built into the scriptlet. So I think what Bill has done is really brilliant, and doesn't charge for this stuff, but I would encourage, if you go ahead and use his scriptlets, at least buy him a cup of coffee, do something, because he does this stuff without any fees whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that. So at this point, there's another script I'm going to show you, and this is a glow script. You may have heard of something, especially if you're into photography like I am, called the Orton glow effect. It was developed by Michael Orton in the 90s. Well, this is his spin on the Orton effect. And what it does is it looks at the highlights and applies a glow effect to the highlights themselves. And you could do this in a layered manner. So for example, I could do a 2-stage glow effect here, and you'll notice the difference. Before and after. And by the way, if I want to check, you know how in PixInsight you can get a readings? I could do the same thing here. So I can shift and click right by the heart of the Heart Nebula, and look at the readout here. It shows red, green, and blue. If I click the preview off, look at those numbers. You see how they went down. So at this point, maybe I want to reduce the opacity. I could slide it, or I could just go to, say, 35% opacity, just like you would in layers in Photoshop. Very similar to that. So now, look at the before, look at the after. It's not as high, it's below 9, which tells me I haven't clipped the highlights. Two more things and we'll be done with this image. So let's go back to where we were. Unstretched, stretched, GHS applied, or SHO, normalization, GHS was applied, and the glow effect. Quite an improvement. So now you're wondering, well, what about the green? I know there's a big debate. Some people like the green, some people don't like the green color. Let's go to the SCNR modified, and we'll show you the different options that you have. So here, I haven't done anything to the green yet. Another thing you could do is, if I just go ahead and use my mouse, I can magnify what's going on. And if I go ahead and apply the green, removing the green, you see how it does that, and it still leaves the yellow, even if I eliminate 100% of the green. And by the way, you can show the green areas. And if I bring this back, now you can see there's some green there, right? But I'll go here and I'll show the result. If I go to the standard SNR average, which is standard at PixInsight, look at the difference. It's taken out all the detail of the yellow. So that's why I like using the hybrid approach. It's a nice approach to modify the green without destructing all the details or removing them. And as a compromise, I'll just go ahead and keep it in the middle. If there was a lot of magenta, we could remove that as well. And just a thought here, I did not go through Noise Exterminator. Normally, I would do some noise removal, but because we're just trying to get this done, I'm not going to worry about that at this point. So that's my image so far. So the last step in the process will be to go ahead and add the stars. So I'm going to go ahead, I don't have that as a shortcut. Go to Cosmic Photos, PixelMathUI. Go back and select Screen, Linear, or Nonlinear Stars. Remember, these stars had a lot of magenta in them. The pixel math behind this takes care of it. So what I'm going to do now is I bring up the image I processed so far. I'll add the stars only image that I created. And notice that nothing happened. The reason is I didn't select linear stars. So remember what the stars looked before? Now they look a little bit more natural. Now, in my opinion, it's always better to have RGB stars if you have access to them, but Sometimes when you're getting external data, like from Telescope Live or Astrophotomarker.com, that may not be available. So you do the best you can. And I know there are utilities out there that allow you to do this beyond this scriptlet, but RGB stars look so much nicer. I still prefer to do that. Now, one of Bill's earlier scripts was a screening technique that he developed with a preview, along with Mike Cranfield and his user interface. And that would allow you to increase the star size. You can do the same thing here. It's all been incorporated. Or I can reduce the star size. And in the case of these stars before, I never really saturated them. So the default is 0.5. I can add a little more saturation if I want. And if I look here in a magnified view, now you can see the stars, and I think it's quite a difference. I'll bring it back to the default. Quite a difference compared to what we had before. So I'll just go ahead and I'll click OK. I happen to like the way it looks. There's also a check mark for green and magenta stars to remove those. It's all part of the process. So this is the final image. And if I go ahead and do a 1-to-1 magnification, you can still see I have a lot of detail here. The colors look like a traditional SHO palette. And I've modified the green without getting rid of the yellow from the sulfur or from the hydrogen. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, let me go ahead and take a look here. Actually, no. They're not questions yet. I will remind people that they can ask questions.
Okay, so
ask questions.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get rid of the project. And now I'm going to bring up my next image, which is a one-shot color image. And this is going to make it really interesting. So I'm going to go to my Heart and Soul files that I pre-processed. I'm going to bring these up. And now, since I closed out that project, I'm going to have to open up my process icons again. So I'll load those up. And I believe these are the icons that I had set up previously. Yep, these are the same ones. What I'll just do is I'll go ahead and select these and separate them because these are the ones that are the scriptlets I'll be showing. So in this case, these are images that I took from my backyard over probably 7 or 8 nights. It's about 60 hours worth of integration time between all 3 master lights. 1 hour was devoted to the stars. So I have the SHO, I have the HOO, and I have the RGB, as you can see here. And the RGB, I just did a normal workflow. I ran SPCC, and I went ahead and stretched it with multi-scale adaptive stretch, which I'm really starting to like the more and more that I use it within PixInsight. And you can use SPCC, by the way, in a broadband image. I would caution you, though, with any narrowband image, not to use SPCC when you're using these scripts, especially. It just kind of defeats the purpose of it. And I know there are videos out there where people are showing it, but if they try to use narrowband normalization, it doesn't come out the way it's supposed to, and they usually have to spend a lot of time in Photoshop trying to repair it. So just a caution there for someone who's been using these scripts for a few years. So normally what I would used to have to do with these 2 master lights, the HOO and the SO, I used to have to run a utility called DB extract, and it would separate the individual channels S, H, and O from both of these master lights. And it was very easy to use, but it was just an extra step I had to take. What we're going to do in this case, though, is we are going to go ahead and combine the one-shot color into one image, both of these master lights. And this is the script I'm going to bring up that Bill developed. This is just sheer genius because it's doing so many things behind the background. So this is my HOO image. I've already done the work on it. And this is my SOO image. And you see it's all green, and that's normal. And now I have the option for output. Do I want to use an SHO palette? Or I could go with an HSO palette. I could even use the SHO luminance if I wanted to. I don't happen to use that at all. 90% of the time I'm in SHO. And then from here, all I have to do is apply it with the check mark. Always wait till these things come back online, the color icons. And now you can see it created a new image. And it did that by design because it's not going to overwrite these individual master lights. It's going to create a whole new image. So to save on memory, I'm just going to take these offline. And now, as you can see, this is a unstretched image. It is in a linear mode. And I did this the wrong way. Well, we'll just have to go with this for right now, I guess. But actually, you know what? Let's bring these back. I made a mistake. And I'm just going to bring the two up that I want to bring up. I had it set to the wrong mode, wrong palette. So let's just bring this back up. That was the incorrect one to use. Let me bring it up on the HOO. Okay, so now I'll get it correct. We have the SSO image here combined. We check it. That's a common error that I get when I'm doing it if I'm not watching what I'm doing. So now I'll take these offline. And now it should look somewhat normal. And that's the way it should look. Here we have the SHO image. In this case, because I created some RGB stars, I'm not going to use the stars. So we're just going to zap them out of the way. And once that's done, I'll go ahead and do a simple stretch. Let's go ahead and do that. The name it gives it is PixelMathUI. That's the default name for everything here. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it the way it is at the defaults. Check it. We're done with the stretching. We don't need STF anymore. And we'll bring it into what's showing in the nonlinear state. So at this time, I might go ahead and I'll run Noise Exterminator. We're not going to bother with that right now. And then we'll go ahead with the narrowband normalization or SHO colorization like we did before. Okay, so this shows it in the colorized all state. I'm going to go to, I could do this in normalized SHO. I'm going to go ahead and turn the background neutralization on. I'm going to put the narrowband normalization on. Now it's all normalized. I'm going to set HA as the luminance. 3 standard things I always do. I also have another choice of using what's called colorized S2 plus HOO. If you subscribe to Adam Block, or you've seen some of his YouTube videos on narrowband normalization, he developed his own technique on how to do this. And one of the techniques he introduced was taking narrowband images, creating an HOO, and then adding the S2 and colorizing it separately, and then using image blend. It's a pretty complex process, takes a lot of time. Bill developed this to provide you with an alternative way to do that. If I wanted to, I could go ahead and I could add some HO to it, SHO to it. Now, because it's in a colorized mode, I can also change the hue angle. I could, if I wanted to, bring up the saturation, just intensify it a little bit. That might just be a little bit too much. But I might just bring it up just a little bit. And another thing I can do, besides using the sliders, I can click on the bars themselves. And that way I have more finite ways to take care of this. So I'm going to go with this for a change. I've already seen what my other image looks like. Just do this for the heck of it. And because this is doing a lot of things, especially on my computer, it does take a little more time to do this. On your computer, if you have more memory than I do and a more powerful system, it would probably be done in a few seconds. I just don't want you to think that it's going to run like this all the time, because it's not supposed to. Okay, so there we are. If I wanted to, let's just run a little bit of noise exterminator while we're here. I usually set mine at about 75, and this new version that Russ Cronin has put together is really great, because using the iterations, it really maintains the detail while you do the noise reduction. In the past, you really had to watch how much denoise you were applying, but with this particular version, you can really control it. Okay, so that's done. Looks a little cleaner now at this point. So I've done all that. Now I can go ahead and I'll go into GHS like I have before. Bring up the preview. Go into linear fit. Again, all I'm doing is making some adjustments for the tonality of the image. And I'm going as far as I can go without clipping. I'm going to apply this. I'm going to reset it. And I'm going to set a symmetry point right here to try to bring this graph out a little further to the right, and watch the detail I can bring out at this point. Now, again, there are a couple areas here on this image I always watch out for. I watch out for the Fishhead Nebula, because as you can see, it's a little bit too bright. We're going to take care of that as well. Let's go ahead and set this the way it is. I'm going to reset it. Another trick that I learned from Adam Block, if you have an area like this that's clipped, this would also apply to areas like M42, for example. I'm going to go ahead and set a symmetry point for that. And now I'm going to go ahead and stretch. Notice how that comes down. Now you can see it's not as high. I'm going to bring it down a little bit further. It's getting a little lower. That's a little too low. Let's reset it again. Okay. There, we'll do that. Now I bring it up like this. I'll reset it. And then I'll go ahead and I'll stretch it again. And I'll bring down the highlights a little bit. And I can also play a little bit with the shadows if I need to. So I could probably spend more time on that if I wanted to, but for the sake of the presentation time we have, I'm going to say that's good enough at this point. And the red's always going to be higher anyways. That's just the way it is with the particular palette that I used. So at this point now I can go into saturation. And if you wanted to, you could go ahead and use other tools. I can show you those as well. But for this one, I'll just add a tiny bit of saturation to it. Go from there, apply it. Now that's completed. So there we go. So here's what we have thus far. I'm not going to add any glow techniques to this. There's no need to do it. There's really nothing else I need to do at this point except add the stars. So I'm going to tuck this away for right now. As you can see, these are my RGB stars. Again, it's only an hour's worth of data. I'm going to clone this. And on the clone one, I'm going to go ahead and remove the stars. Because the script I'm going to show you next is going to use both of these images to add the RGB stars to the narrowband image. Put these out of the way. And then I'm going to go to the final scriptlet for this image. And I'm going to go bring up RGB stars. Now, this was a separate script. If you look at Bill Blanshan's site, YouTube site, you'll see that he had another one, a scriptlet just that did this. It was a different type of technique that you had to use, but basically it's doing the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the source or target. The target view is going to be the non-stellar image we've been working on. The starry image is going to be the RGB. This is normal, by the way. You're going to see a pattern like this of the stars. And then I'm going to add in the clone. And would you look at that? Now we have RGB stars added to the narrowband image, and I didn't have to write one line of PixelMath code. So at this point, I can go ahead and I can enlarge this just to see how the colors match up. They look fairly natural. If I want to increase the saturation, I can. If I want to remove the green and magenta stars, this is the option to do that. And it also allows me to see the mask. I can actually show the regular mask itself. Here's the star mask. And then here's the starry mask. So I'll double click, bring it up, and then I'll go ahead and apply it. And that's the finished image. So we've showed you a mono image, a one-shot color image, how easy it is to integrate those together into a single image. So you can do your normal SHO normalization like you would normally do. And that's it for those two. Any questions at this point?
Let's see. Disappointingly, no.
Oh. Do we have a lot of people online?
A fair amount. We got 55, which is
Okay.
about what we usually get.
Great. Well, maybe I've explained it so well there are no questions.
Maybe so.
Could be.
Any questions in the room? Eric, Linda?
Well, I think a lot of people are going to go back and start pushing buttons, which I might do to see how this operates. It's obviously interesting, but until you get in there and work with it a little bit, you probably can't appreciate
Right.
how it applies to what you are doing. But anytime we can automate processes and reduce the number of steps and get a result which is interesting, I think, we're all obliged to try it.
Right. Any other questions from the panel?
None from me currently.
Okay, great. Yeah. So these are just a couple of
All right.
examples. Now this particular image, I like this image a lot just because it's my first published image. It was the one you saw during my introduction, which is the standard SHO palette. It's in the March publication in the gallery section of the Reflector magazine. So I was pretty happy about that one. But I'm looking forward to getting my mono rig together later in the year for a nebula season, because I know I'm going to get a lot more detail with the mono versus the one-shot color. But you know, when I started using these initial scripts, the original ones that Bill came out with, I was crawling along. It took a while to get used to them, but as I got more adept at using it, I mean, I see all these demos on YouTube using very complex processes, and they might get you to the same result. They may not. Maybe you prefer the result you're using with a different workflow. That's fine. But for me, this particular way of doing it is the only way I've been processing narrowband type images, and it's worked out extremely well for me. I've gotten a lot of people saying, "Yeah, it looks really good. How did you do it?" And I explain it to them. And again, the only thing I would caution you on is make sure you use an unlinked stretch on the narrowband. Do not use SPCC. I've tried it different ways. In fact, when I started using the scripts, I was using SPCC, and then Adam Block asked me, "Why are you doing that? You shouldn't be doing that." And when I told Bill that I was using a linked stretch and I was having trouble, he said, "You shouldn't be doing that." So I wanted to use this opportunity at least to explain to everybody the things you need to look out for, because those are the typical things that will get you hung up when you try to use these scriptlets. Now, I know it's 7:30. I know we were running a little late. If you want, I can show you the HOO example. Otherwise, we can stop at this point.
Well, David, it's up to you. Yeah, we're running a little over an hour, but we got a late start. So if you want to do something else, yeah, we'll go for it.
Yeah, it's something I think people should be aware of, at least, just because there used to be separate scripts for HOO, SSO, and HSO, and in the standard narrowband normalization process that's in PixInsight today, you can switch between those palettes. It's a little different with this new method. So let me show you how that works. And I'll bring up SH2 308. It's only one master light, so it should be really easy to work with. Let's bring this up.
While you're bringing that up, there's a comment from Jim Bishop that's probably common to a lot of the watchers. It says it's a different workflow from what he normally does, but your results are intriguing, so he needs to spend some time with it. So I think that's going to be true for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's an acquired taste. You have to work with it. It actually gets the results done really well. I will say that Bill's scripts are well thought out. They're what I call elevated scripts. And he takes a lot of time to do it. And while there might be other methods or processes or scripts that do similar things, his tends to be the most sophisticated out there. So he puts a lot of time and effort into it. So I'm very confident if I use one of his scripts, it's going to work. Okay. So here is the script that I'm going to show you, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove the stars on this one. If I speak again, hopefully I'll have my iMac with 64 gigs of memory. That'll make things a lot easier. And again, you can see it's unstretched like the other ones were. So the normal thing I'm going to do is do a simple stretch. I'm going to leave this at the default. So that's done. We're now in a nonlinear phase. And then at this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring up PixelMath library one more time. And we're going to go to a process called Narrowband Normalization Light. And by the way, I taught myself how to use these scriptlets just by reading the description and playing around with it. So I encourage anybody who wants to play with these scriptlets. You don't wait for a video from Bill. Just go ahead and play with it like I did. I think you'll find you get some great results out of it. Now notice the default is mono camera. We want to have this as HOO. And then we want the background neutralized. If I want to, I can remove the noise from the background like this. I can change the red, the green, or the blue, because this would be H for red, O for green, O for blue. And I could make changes to that if I want. But here's the key to this one. It's called the blend mode. Now, he has a similar mode set up in the process that's currently available. But these are just different blending modes for the HOO. So this is mode 1. This is mode 2. And this is mode 3, which I like the best because it brings out the most detail. And if you look at Astrobin, most of the dolphin head nebulas that have gotten top picks or whatever have this type of mode or color. So I do prefer that myself. You can also manually adjust the blend amount. And in this case, I could choose the luminance. That wouldn't work out as well. If I choose green or I choose blue, remember, oxygen is the dominant signal here, not red. I could choose to keep it off. I could choose to keep it in what's called preserve mode, preserve the current luminance. But I find it either the green or the blue, they do the same thing. So I'm going to go with this one right now. Okay, so that is all done. I'm going to close this out. And again, what do I do next? I want to adjust the levels. You could do a similar thing in Photoshop. In fact, if you want to take this image the way it is now, if you're comfortable with just using Photoshop, bring it into Photoshop at this point. It's totally up to you. There's no right or wrong way to do this. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adjust my black level. First, I have to go into linear, bring this up. Okay, so now we're adding some more detail. We're going to bring out more detail. I'm going to apply this. And now I'm going to go ahead to the darkest section, add a symmetry point, and now look at all the detail it's bringing up. There's a saying in photography, light reveals and shadows define. And I've been using that saying through my whole time that I've been doing photography as well as astrophotography. So at this point now I can go ahead and I can add a little bit of saturation if I want. Might even need some noise reduction. Let's go ahead and apply it. Part of the reason that's got a lot of noise is I resampled the thing several times down. So that could be a reason why we have more noise on this. Typically, my image is not as noisy, but I might just want to go one more pass, maybe at around 50% or so. Try to clean it up a little bit. And then the final part will be adding the stars. Okay, so at this point, these are the stars I'm going to add. I'm going to go to Script, PixelMathUI, go up here and go to bring linear or nonlinear stars. When I shot this last year, I wasn't doing my due diligence to take RGB stars at the time. I thought I could get away with just the SHO. I'm going to say linear stars. And here we go. And again, same things apply. I can add saturation if I want. I can increase the stars, or I can decrease them, or just leave them at the default. I can remove the green and magenta stars. This is all built into the PixelMath. I'm going to apply it. One thing I neglected to show, and it'll take 2 seconds to do it, and then we'll be done. But for those of you who work with PixelMath, if you want to see what the PixelMath looks like for this particular scriptlet, you just click on that, and now it shows you, here's all the logic behind it. Here's everything that was done. So for those of you who are really into the PixelMath coding, I applaud you. You can go ahead and look at it. You can make changes to it if you want, whatever you want to do. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
And you're back.
Yeah, now if I can just
Very
get back to
interesting.
my menu, I'm back.
Yeah.
You're back. You're jiggling there for a minute. What was that?
Yeah, your
I
camera went
see
wild for a second.
It's a time difference.
Yes.
A time we got into a time warp. Oh, very interesting, David. You know, I think a lot of us are going to go and at least explore there and see what it is that it might do for our processing.
Yeah.
Again, it's no religion here. If it helps, it helps.
Right. It's
Yeah.
for those who want to use it. I know for a long time people have been doing their own methods, their own workflows. I happened to get into the hobby at the right time. Number one, the ZWO invented the ASI Air, so it made my rig a smart rig. I know there are smart telescopes, but it made my rig smart, and it made it easier for me to do my own work, having never done this before. I don't use Nina, so that makes it a lot easier for me. And then PixInsight was still just coming out. It was still rather new, and now it's really evolved. And I will say one thing, anybody in the audience who hasn't gotten into PixInsight yet and wants to learn it, get the free trial for 45 days that they have. At least that's the one that I got. And spend $60 on Atom Block's fast track training. That's what I did. Made a huge difference. I got a great standard workflow to start out with, and I've been adding on to it since then and learning new stuff. But just investing in that course got me off to a good start here. And then the PixelMath scripts that Bill has been writing for the past 3 years or so really helped me out. So I would recommend any beginner at least to try these out. And then for those of you who are using the current processes now that you use, try it out and do an A/B comparison. Use these scripts compared to what you're doing and see what kind of results you get.
By the way, when we end the program, you're certainly welcome to stay on with us.
Yes.
Sure.
We sometimes chat. Yeah, very interesting. We've answered all the questions online. Molly?
Yeah. People were still just in awe. I need to, people say that I need to watch and explore, different from what I usually do. And yeah, so people are soaking it in.
Well, that's good. And if they have any questions, they can put them in the comments and I'll be happy to reply to them on the YouTube.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, you can come back and look at how many people have viewed the session.
I always
we
forget.
might only have 50 or 60 tonight, but over the next couple of weeks, you'll see that number will grow. There'll be hundreds and sometimes more.
Yeah, I've seen like a couple thousand listed on some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite regularly now, I think.
Great.
Over 1,000, sometimes a couple thousand.
Excellent. Well, I'll stay on for the chat, and thanks for
All
having me.
Are we all set? Who's running the show? Molly, are you running?
Yeah, I've
it
got
now?
it.
All right, so I think we're done. Thanks everyone out there, and we don't have a program next week yet, but keep watching. Maybe Molly will put something in there. And in 2 weeks, we have John Hayes, obviously a fascinating, I don't even have to know the subject. John's just a fascinating speaker.
I think
And
he's
one of the finest astrophotographers that we have, period. And
Yeah.
other than that, Molly, you want to take us out?
Yeah.
All right.
all right.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
See you in a couple weeks at
Bye.
least.
Good night.